There we go. All right. So I'm actually trying to incorporate this new tech. And if you were in the class last night, you saw that, well, I think the new microphone is like a couple installments in, but yeah, but the use of like a different platform. So I'm just messing around with those. So hence you got a pretty strong millennial pause here. And actually, I have another more, I don't know, ancient technology here from last night. Nice little bell. Um, so I'm actually starting really early because Margarita is gonna come in here and clean, and I want to get out of her way because I can sense she wants to start earlier. But, but yeah. So like before I jumped on, one of the things I'd been thinking about, look like a little sleepy frogish. Um, One of the things I'd been thinking about is how, when I started doing these at the beginning of the year, it was like pretty uncomfortable. Like it was really cringy, and I would be, um, like there's just this gap where I'd be thinking about stuff, and then I'd sit down, and the nerviness would create this gap between my ability to just really like connect with what was coming up. Um, it's kind of the thing, with stress where stress makes easy things hard, hard things, impossible. And it's just that thing with it, like when a nervous system is activated, just feeling how it diminishes capability in a given moment. And I guess my thought on this has to do with that now, so like nervous system conditioning, which is exposure to triggers and learning how to manage ourselves within them, and is like is really useful because now this is the place I feel more comfortable. And teaching the class last night, it's getting a little bit more comfortable, but still, it's like one of those things. So I'm gonna read. Um, Oh, and I wanna show you the technology here, because okay, so one of the comments I got last night in the class was that, um was that the Alf in the background was distracting, and if you're American, you know who Alf is. It's a TV show from the '80s. So this is part of the new technology, um, and it can even go as far as going like this. And then even here, I can peek in from the side. So, yeah. So I'm gonna actually try to add these in with the readings. I don't, at first I thought maybe I'd put the pages up, but they're not really readable from this size. So, um, I don't know. But the diagrams I think would be good here. So, all right, let's get into it. And, one of the things I'm finding in this chapter in particular, because this is really synced up with my process right now and what I'm working on, is like, kind of feeling like called out when I read it. I'm like, wait, this is exactly what's going on for me right now. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe it's the same for you, maybe not. But anyway, so I'm going to dip right in here. So the two sections, productivity versus busy, and time. Thing about time, I think is really an important note, is time is the currency of the third hub. Time is the currency of power. And, we'll read, and then, like whatever arises, kind of I'll chat to. But like money, like, time is money, right? I mean, it's like kind of a thing, but it really is like who controls the time is who has control. And even when we get into negotiation and conflict management, we'll even get further into what that means, in a practical way. So, productive versus busy. So, success and fulfillment require decisive action about the things that matter. Distracted, chronically rushed people who place significant value on how busy they are often miss the boat when they're spread too thin. Sorry, I'm like a little bit. It's kind of the weird thing with the microphone now is I don't have like it's like the book blocks it, and then so this like angle is kind of weird. So maybe that's something to figure out. Okay, pardon me. I have the AC on, so it's like kind of making my nose a little bit runny. If I have to blow my nose, I'll mute the microphone. So, okay, I'm going to start here. In the third hub, we ask ourselves if we have the ability and willingness to focus on substantive achievement or prefer to spend our time being chronically and chaotically busy. The prompt here is to do fewer incidental things and more of what matters. A few good places to make cuts are time with people who don't appreciate you, responding with urgency to non urgent issues, talking to customers who are either not going to buy or will drain your energy when they do, giving more to people than they would ever wish to provide for you, and spending time on details that don't really make a difference. Yeah, I'm gonna read those again. I think they're pretty strong. So a few so this actually works really well with time too, because this is really not only about other people valuing our time, it's us understanding what the value of our time is. And so in that, the prompt here is to do a few incidental things and more of what matters. A few places to make cuts are time with people who don't appreciate you, responding with urgency to non-urgent issues, talking to customers who are either not going to buy or will drain your energy when they do, giving more to people than they ever wish to provide for you, and spending time on details that don't really make a difference. Are you willing and able to see the difference between busyness and actions that contribute to the things that matter? Yeah. And so one of the things about busyness is it's a way of feeling of like creating almost like a counterfeit fit sense of value. So, it's not like super uncommon that people who are chronically busy use it as a defense and are just they're too busy. I don't have time for this. So it's kind of it's a defense mechanism. And even, so even the prompt of looking into these things that we do, it's a defense, and one of the things is I believe at the core is it's defending, um, low self-esteem. So so this is really very much about third hub, like with busyness, and instead of that being a point of shame where it's like, "Oh, this is," or shaming, it's like, like in class last night, we had the week 2 where we're doing the core needs and the innocence and the vulnerability of those needs really, yeah. I think it's really like it's just really important that we like to be aware of like the discomfort around kind of like the softness and the innocence and the vulnerability of these core needs, because a lot of defenses get built up around considering them to be possibly even embarrassing or like neediness or whatever. But yeah, busyness, like, so I wrote this from kind of a multifaceted perspective because I was thinking about people who've worked for me. I was thinking about, people in my personal life. And, one of the things about people who've worked for me is seeing them be like this thing that they're so chronic and like chaotically busy. Um, and they're not filtering. So everything that comes their way winds up being something that they're responsible for taking care of. And I think that this is actually probably something, like a bit controversial. I met with somebody yesterday, And part of the conversation is about this is just something that is I don't think it's talked about enough, in professional settings because it's not is like what you get involved in is really important for your career. I mean, the idea that you even see that I'm like, oh, do I talk about this? Is that part of this thing about emotional regulation is that like any emotion that's arising is like to not express it, represents a lack of integrity, or kind of the heroism of like speaking up when you're emotionally loaded in a situation and being like like, see, I was the one who had the guts to like say something, kind of thing. And in a professional setting, emotional regulation is like really valuable because one of the things is it eliminates the longer tail of the creation of conflict. And so in a professional environment, being somebody that's associated with problems is not in your favor. So being a person that points out problems, being a person that being a person that points out problems and being really judicious about it, about which ones you choose to actually take on, because considering them a liability, any problem that you take on is a liability, or that you like, um, so you choose them wisely instead of it be kind of doing sort of what I think is an adaptation, which is like having a hero complex about being like, I'm always the person that takes the tough line. I'm always the person that speaks up. And just keeping in mind that jobs are just a game in a sense. Like you're really in a it's this isn't like it's yeah, like and maybe I'm gonna stop talking about this. This is like a because it might not even some people might not really care about it. I'm happy to talk further about it, but I mean, some of the most frequent advice I've given in recent years of people is taking on, like noticing there's an issue with the product or the process has, unless it's your direct responsibility and that you're going to be the person that handles changing it, there's just, it's like, that like there's, the way I usually frame this is that pointing out things that need to be fixed or things that are going to go wrong, being able to predict problems in the future. How it plays out is very different than how it's imagined. Like how it's imagined a lot of, is often, that you'll be the hero, is that there's heroism involved in any of this stuff. And I think that's kind of at the core is the idea of being the person that like speaks up. But in professional environments, it works exactly the opposite way that you think it will. And the thing is, when the thing does go wrong, it's really rare that somebody goes, who said this was gonna happen? And that's a good thing, you're just associated with the problem that happened. So, it's probably a little extra there, but I'm gonna read for time here, and literally and figuratively. So, okay, so time. So in the third hub, unlike the second, we're aware that time is finite. Even though they can't read a clock, toddlers expect certain things at certain times. In The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, William Blake wrote, "Eternity is in love with the productions of time." Time is limited, precious, and not to be squandered. Pleasure in the second hub is unaware of time and its limitations. In pleasure, attention to time detracts from enjoying sensation. Transcendence and the feeling of timelessness are essential for indulging in pleasure, yet time marches forward regardless of our awareness of it. Well, there can be academic discussions about the nature of time. We abandon them if we must catch a plane. Most people trade their time for money, and because it's limited, it's an asset regardless of how much value you place on it. There are 24 hours in a day, and how we spend those hours and money tells us about our values. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess so there's kind of a lot in here. I'm sort of like it's like okay. The transcendence of time. I mean, the thing about being like time is, an illusion, and then it's like you have to like catch a plane, and it's like, it's like this practical illusion, a shared illusion, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna keep reading. By valuing our time, we express power. Time is a primary measurement of power and a common way to invade third hub boundary. When people take up your time, they steal your autonomy. When they give your when you give your time where it's not appropriately valued, or when you are so busy that you don't have time for yourself, it's a direct corollary to how you own your power. I'll read that again. When you give your time where it's not appropriately valued, or when you are so busy that you don't have time for yourself, it's a direct corollary to how you own your power. Wealth is a secondary measurement of power to time, because wealth ultimately can offer the freedom to spend your time exactly as you wish, and trading a lifetime of doing things you don't want to do in exchange for wealth and authority is diminishing your personal freedom and power. It doesn't matter if you have power over other people if you don't have power over yourself. Oof. That's good. If you already love what you do, great. If you don't, make a plan and start taking action. Yeah, there's that one has like a bit of juice in it. Yeah, I think, I'm reading this part and I feel a little bit called out right now. When you give your time where it's not appropriately valued, or when you're so busy that you don't have time for yourself, it's a direct corollary to how you own your power. Yeah, I do advising for this Babson University summer venture program where there's like entrepreneurs, and they'll book time with me to do like little advising sessions where we talk about their companies, and that in and of itself for me is not really like the best use of my time. It's nice. It's not a lot of my time. It's only a couple, yeah, it's not a huge investment. Sorry about my runny nose. But I used to be really real like, so I sometimes I tell people that like Parinama, like I didn't get nicer with Parinama. I didn't become I'm less agreeable because my agreeableness pre TPM was really like creating conflicts within me that are related to things like this, which are that, like when we give people our time and we allow them to kind of abuse it, I guess, is like or just spend it frivolously where it's contributing to what they need to get done, or just it's like not, um like we feel that like us like that kind of hit to our integrity, and that and so what I mean by like party Nama made me less nice is that like yesterday, one of the advising sessions, and the thing is also it's like low emotional load about it, which is a whole other thing. But yesterday, one of the companies was late to their session with me, and I just told the person running, I like waited and I was like, well, it's good. I actually have to, it helps me get a head start to get home. And there was an introduction I could make for them, which was going to be really important for them. And I just, and the advisor, the person who's like running the program or whatever, had said to me, "Well, can they reach out to you?" And I said, "No, it's just how it works." And it felt really right. It just felt, and I didn't feel like over activated by it. I wasn't stewing on it. I was just like, yeah, no, you had the offer of my time. You didn't use it. And there's like, that doesn't grant you access to more of it. So yeah. So that's like the thing about being less nice. And it really is about, I mean, like the thing is that, yeah, I mean, like if you're watching this, this applies to you too. Like, your time is really valuable. It's your life. Your time is your life. And so when people are willing to spend your life by making you wait, or being in a meeting where they run it over without asking for your permission. That's a really common one, is that people will take more time than is allotted and not take notice of it. Let's see. Yeah, it's like, and there's an energetic component to it, but I'm just looking at like straightly, like with a linear aspect of time and the real importance of us valuing that boundary and upholding it. But it was, it's like that example. And the other thing right now, honestly, that is, I'm reaching kind of personally, uh, like a point of reconciliation with my own time is with Parinama, is that I've started with opening a really wide swath about like anybody who wants to under get involved in this and undertake this work. I will make myself available to. And that, like, I'm kind of winnowing that down in real time, because for people who want me to do more work than they're willing to do, that is now becoming a boundary for me. Like, that's like one way, because it's like as it tightens in, and it's uncomfortable, admittedly, because I really want this to be for everyone. But the reality is that this is really hard work. This is not the easy road. I mean, like Mira had, mentioned that last night in class. I'd said, if transformation is easy, it's a consumer product. Um, this is not in that zone. It's hard because, yes, grace can be involved in this process, and it will be, but we are working on patterns that we're attached to, and that's really hard. And one of the things about the difficulty of this is these patterns, these holding patterns, and even the shadow in each of the hubs is, um, like we form attachments to them. Like for example, like fear. Fear is something where it's like it actually is absolutely an essential function. Like, fear is a reflex that zips us out from oncoming harm. Fear kind of like has us act in real time faster than we can comprehend. But if we've chronic fear, it's anxiety, which is actually this kind of like hijacked function of like a belief system that's telling us that, like, thinking about stuff all the time is actually the thing that keeps us safe, when it's like, and then when the reflex acts in the moment, that belief system takes credit for it, when when that acute reflex was going to act no matter how much planning we did. Um and so what we're doing in Parinama is we're softening, and we're actually like consciously looking at these patterns in a way that, I'd call it like softening them, is like a good way to put it. But it's hard. It's really hard, because a lot of this feels like to actually consider even knocking them down. It can be like a surge of anxiety, because even shame, you'd say like, who wants to be ashamed? But many people have a very core, deeply internalized belief that shame is like something that keeps society from descending into debauchery and violence and lunacy and chaos. Um, that even their own shame is the thing that would keep them from, or guilt. Guilt is the thing that keeps you from, like eating an entire chocolate cake. But if we're in touch with, if we're actually I'm not even in touch, it's like connected to what it feels like to do something. Like, guilt is like a natural reflex that arises when it's appropriate. And for eating a chocolate cake, like, that's an imposed, like, that's not real like guilt. If anything, it's like you just feel really bad. you feel really sick. You feel really like, I mean, if you eat a lot of sugar, if you like fill yourself up on that, it's like it doesn't feel good. Like you don't need like to be, and the things like, oh, I'm guilt, like the guilt because I ate something that's gonna make me fat or whatever. You know, it's part of what we're doing is we're actually like working into that in addition. Like, so it's not easy. It's really hard because the thing is that we do think that these things are functional. And I felt I was like taking a walk the other day and I thought, God, it's like the best, that's like the best hustle ever offered up is the hustle that like as chronic conditions like shame and guilt, um, and fear, like the like holding those chronically is like something that's creating like structural soundness in our life. And it's this fundamental um distrust to this inner knowing and the part of ourselves that when we connect with creates the most astonishing versions of our life. And this is why we do this. This is why we do this. We're not just doing this to cause pain. We're doing this because really reestablish our connection and trust with our deepest integrity, life becomes significantly um easier. And I guess easier, richer, more robust, whatever. Um, and I'll say that one of the things is there's also an aspect of it becoming a little bit boring. Back to busyness, is that when the thing about our integrity is that it kind of like the guidance, our inner guidance is that it provides us what we need, kind of when we need it. Which sounds nuts, I understand, or maybe doesn't. But a lot of the busyness of like, oh, being like, well, this and that, I should do this, and doing work on stuff that's actually not going to really matter. Oh, that does go full circle, actually. That busyness, like, there's a lot of space in our in time in a life, and so being willing, that's actually is really connected, like the busyness and time, because it's like filling time with a sense of like, but maybe it's like relieving the sense of anxiety for time being open. And even like what that means is like just being with yourself, being able to just kind of like enjoy a meal or just like be present, just be calm or whatever, instead of being like, oh my God, well, I'm trying to work on this thing and figure it out and I need to read all this stuff and that. Um, it's like it, if you're in the this kind of zone with one's integrity, like, and I'm calling it integrity, but it's like kind of like emblem is one of the words I use in the book, soul or whatever, core, the force, whatever, that whatever this thing is within us, like things arise in a near perfection. Like, so if you need an idea about something, it's kind of like, I mean, and you've experienced this. This is not something I'm like talking about. Like you've experienced where you're like, oh my gosh, I just had this great idea, and it's like it's pretty fully formed. Um, the reason we get in the way of that is these adaptations keep being like, yeah, but you need to be like like kind of always head on a swivel and all this stuff that makes us not trust ourselves. And that trust, it's like it comes up, and this is happening a lot with the development of Parinama School, which is um, creating space for like kind of new ideas to come in. And I'll like want to be working on it because I like working, but when it lands, it's like really well formed. It'll be like, okay, here's the structure of this. And it'll wake me up at 3 in the morning or whatever. It's not polite, but it really beats the illusion of being like, well, if I work on this all day and I read about how other people have done this and I watch about a million YouTube lessons about how to structure a session and see how other people like it's like, some of that comes up even, like, in the sort of moment of clarity, like, there is some this is kind of a ramble now at this point. I mean, there is direction about things to look at, but it's not like the chaos that I used to be, like, constantly have to be working on a million things at once, and, that's the thing. Yes, it's a little bit windy, but, but I'm gonna break off now. It's been a solid 30 minutes. Here, for one more. This message brought to you by Alf. Um, Actually, yeah, there could be, like, a fake sponsor for these. Oh my god, that would be amazing. This session brought to you by Alf. Ding. Alright. Okay, sending you lots of love. I really appreciate you for being here and connecting on this, and I can't wait until next time. And the thing is, also, any comments I will answer. Um, I do appreciate any interaction. It really means a lot to me, and it's been great to be hearing from people and getting feedback about things that, especially, the classes have really brought this in, which is notes on how to make this better. Because as much as this is me, like, riffing freestyle on this, ultimately, what truly matters to me about what I'm doing is that this is optimized to be accessible and usable, and that the tools are created and exist for you to succeed in this if you have, like, earnest intention and it connects with what you feel is like a process that you want to get involved in. So, anyway, sending you lots of love. See you next time. Bye.